Should refrain from using personally identifiable information in connection with an individual student. Speakers are expected to deliver their comments with the decorum and respect appropriate to the conduct of the public's business. Thank you for your cooperation, and thanks to those who have come out to speak with us tonight. Tonight, 10 citizens have signed up to address the board, and I'm going to call the first 3 names, so the 2 following can be prepared. We start with Monique Baruti, followed by Bethany Kozma, to be followed by Beatrice Beery. Ms. Baruti?
Now it is. I'm good. I created a video for this meeting, but you chose to censor it. By doing so, you prove my point. You say you value public engagement, and yet you refuse to engage the public on the topic of gender identity. My video started with a clip from May of 2015, the meeting during which Policy 1450 was passed. The changes to it were passed. There was a room full of people begging to be heard, since you passed this policy without a single public forum. Just weeks after it was brought up as new business, 10 people get to address this board every 2 weeks for an incremental time period of 3 minutes on a topic of your choosing. And even then, you decide if it addresses the topic closely enough for your tastes. There's no discussion, no acknowledgement, no exchange of ideas. My next clip shows Mrs. Schultz recognizing the fact that this topic generated more spontaneous public discourse and commentary than any other in the history of FCPS. And yet, you didn't choose to give any of them a voice. My next clip showed Miss Patty Reed also commenting on the hundreds and hundreds of emails she had received. She said, and I quote, "The process used to pass this policy was troubling and embarrassing." The no change memo on the agenda tonight exists because of a Virginia state code that requires this board to review and update each one of its policies at least every 5 years. Policy 2601, the Student Rights and Responsibilities, which was also updated to include gender identity language, is part of that no change memo. I am trying to make the case that it shouldn't be. Another section of that same Virginia code states that each local school board should ensure that policies are developed giving consideration to the views of teachers, parents, and other citizens. Have you truly given consideration to the views of concerned citizens, or are you just pushing your own agenda? My next clip shows Ms. McLaughlin at the end of the last meeting saying, "It is concerning to me that we have citizens who are concerned that this board has been tone deaf." I do believe that this board continues to honor its very important commitment to being engaged with our public. Words without action are simply that, empty words. If this board is truly committed to public engagement, prove it. Plan a town hall or a public forum. Create a task force. Take a survey. This board has taken on controversial issues in the past and has shown a commitment to making informed decisions about later high school start times, half-day Mondays, with years of public forums and studies. Even the post-Labor Day start warranted a survey of FCPS. Why do you refuse to make informed decisions and engage the public on this issue? I again urge you to repeal the changes to Policy 1450 and the Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook and start down a path of true community engagement for all of your stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. Bethany Kozma, to be followed by Beatrice Beery.
Good evening. My name is Bethany Kozma, and tonight I come to speak about suicide prevention. The most important advocates for students who are in danger of suicide, with very few exceptions, are parents. I learned firsthand many years ago that keeping silent does not help anyone. In fact, it does the opposite. Back in high school, as a predator's victim, I kept silent. Had I spoken up, perhaps I would help prevent that predator from sexually assaulting again. At the time, like most female victims, I felt that it somehow was my fault. It wasn't. For some victims of rape and sexual assault, depression and thoughts of or attempted suicide to remove the pain are real. Although I told some of my peers, I simply desperately wanted to forget about it. I tried to forget about it. I thought I could contain it. I was wrong. Predators, even high school boys, will not stop with one victim, especially if they realize they can get away with it without any consequences. Only a few years later, sadly, this same predator victimized another girl I knew very well. And since then, I vowed never to keep quiet again. Now, as a Fairfax County resident, mother, and advocate, I will not be silenced. I must stand up for not only my daughters, but other girls. As a majority of you elected school board members are fellow women, I'm sure that my story should resonate with you, at least one or two of you. Statistically speaking, 1 in 6 women are victims of rape and sexual assault, and males dominate the sex-related crime statistics. You may have heard of the horrible stories of young girls committing suicide after indecent photos were posted on the internet. Imagine how predators will be emboldened and enabled, endangering other young girls if they are allowed to enter girls' facilities and be protected under your current policy. Although Policy 1450 seems innocuous, its repercussions are far-reaching. I ask you to put yourselves in the shoes of our Fairfax County women and girls. Do you want a boy or man to see or photograph you undressing or worse, naked in one of the bathroom or locker rooms? No one should be bullied or belittled. Yet what about those women and girls who are being sexually victimized or feel discriminated against because they have no safe place? Sadly, all are ill-served by Policy 1450 and the Non-Discrimination Clause. So why are you enabling the real threats of sexual assault to over 90,000 girls in Fairfax? Why are you allowing and promoting predators to hide under transgender protections invoked by subjective feelings instead of biological facts? You are charged with ensuring the safety of all students. How can anyone think that a policy allowing biological boys into biological girls' facilities and vice versa is promoting safety? Plainly and simply, it's a recipe for victimization of women and girls, and worse, preventable suicides. I implore you to listen to the parents who are concerned for the safety and security of all children and involve us in the suicide prevention plan. Please repeal Policy 1450 and protect our children.
Next call on Beatrice Berry, to be followed by Alice Guo, to be followed by John Kochka.
My name's Beatrice Berry. I have 2 girls attending Fairfax County Public Schools. I'd like to start my 3 minutes by sending our most sincere and heartfelt condolences to Tom and Mindy Worrows, whose son Connor took his own life this past weekend. Connor was a junior at Hayfield High School. Suicide is a very shocking event. For some parents, their teens suffer silently with anxiety, depression, mood disorders, bullying, and parents never know. Some parents, like me, know fully well that their child suffers with great anxiety and has suicidal thoughts. My daughter Ella suffers from severe anxiety and learning disabilities, and at times she's crippled by her worries. Ella was in 1st grade when she began having panic attacks at school. I was called immediately to remove her because she was disrupting the other children in the classroom. And I give kudos to the school for recognizing the person that could help her the most was her parent, not a school psychologist or a counselor, but her parent. Ella is seen as different by the other children because she isn't in all their classes. Sometimes her anxiety increases and she uses coping mechanisms or has to leave the classroom to deal with her anxiety, and this calls attention to her. I imagine that the children who suffer from gender identity issues and confusion can feel like Ella does every day, that some may suffer from great anxiety, maybe even depression, because of the confusion they experience. And I believe in the fundamental dignity of each person, each human being, and that they all have rights. All of us have the right to feel safe and comfortable, accepted, and loved. Your family is where you gain your identity and the knowledge of who you are. Fairfax County Public Schools, your board, say that you foster a culture of caring and that families play a fundamental role in children's education, but I don't believe that you embody these values when you ask my daughters to share their bathrooms and locker rooms with boys. Did you take into consideration my child, who has special needs, who now has high stress and massive anxiety over the prospect of sharing her bathroom with a boy? Do the parents of these children want them to endure more stress and anxiety, making the choice to allow them to use an opposite-sex bathroom? When one of these children ends up thinking that they can't handle it anymore, when he or she takes their own life because of this stress or anxiety, who will bear the burden of this blame? Will it be you? I'm asking that the decision be based on every child's dignity and rights, not only those who claim alienation. Every child deserves to feel safe in their school and in every school activity that they attend. Parents, or as you call us, stakeholders, are paramount in the decision-making process, and the school should not override it, thinking that they know best. If my child has to share a bathroom with a boy, I should be informed. If my child has to be in a room on a school-sponsored event with a boy, I should be informed. I, the parent, will then make the proper decision for my child. Practice what you preach, school board, and make an environment where I quote, "Everyone thrives in a vibrant, healthy, safe, enriching, and respectful environment. My children deserve to thrive as well and feel safe and respected. The decisions you have made behind closed doors with little biased stakeholder input is unfair and treads on my children's rights. I say shame on you, school board members, and I pray no parent has to stand up here to tell you that your misguided decisions caused the death of their child. I ask you to repeal."
Alice Guo, to be followed by John Kochka, to be followed by Vanessa Pointer. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm here today to talk about suicide prevention. Roughly 90% of rapes are committed to females by males, with 1 in 6 females suffering sexual assault. So why is the school board creating a hostile learning environment by allowing males into females' locker rooms and bathrooms? Based on national statistics, there is a relatively large group of sexual assault survivors, and roughly 7,000 young girls in Fairfax County schools are survivors. They carry trauma, they have severe distress, and roughly 1,000 of these girls may contemplate suicide, with hundreds already attempting suicide. So I want to hear about your suicide prevention for them. Many other survivors, they live in fear, silence, and distress. And your policy can further entrench their fear, silence, and distress. And your policy is also sending out a strong message to these girls that they do not matter. And your policy is also somehow slapping their bruised faces, that to feel fear and anxiety about males in their bathroom is somewhat bigotry and wrong. And your policy is instead forcing them to live with it and be content with whatever the cost, whatever the depression, and whatever the intense suffering. So I want to hear your suicide prevention. Survivors of sexual assault are not political activists. They often live in shame, guilt, and depression. They need our help to pull them back to life, not push them over the cliff. So why is the board trying to torment these girls with a harmful and controversial experiment that is not backed up by science, that has never been implemented anywhere on its own accord throughout 8,000 years of written human history? So I want to hear your suicide prevention. Again, 1 in 6 females suffered sexual assault. So where is your human empathy for a plight of suffering of this relatively large group? The simple solution to their suffering, their depression, their problem is to repeal policy 1450 right now. Thank you.
John Kochka, to be followed by Vanessa Pointer.
I am John Weston Kochka, and I yield my time to Nina Camara.
Good evening to you all. My name is Nene Camara. I'm so honored to be here this evening to talk about suicide prevention and sex education. I work very hard to support my family. I work 16 hours a day most of the time, but at least I find it important for me to be here, for my voice to be heard. In most cases, I understand that maybe parents' voice are not heard all the time, and they are not included when making decisions. And as a parent of the Fairfax County School, and I'm interested in this topic. Most of the kids suffering from suicide, there are kids who thought their voice are not heard when they suffer traumatic experience. And it is the responsibility of us as parents and you as important personnel here present in this evening program to help this situation to prevent short mishaps from not happening again. I have a daughter who is in the 6th grade, who is 11 years old, and as an elementary student, I'm pleading that sex education should not be introduced in the elementary school for some of the reasons I'm going to give. When we came to the Fairfax County, I came because I understand they have the best schools, and I'll be proud for my daughter to be in the Fairfax County. And based on that, sex is really nice to be educated to students, but I want to believe that it's not for elementary. Because when you look at the elementary school, most of the kids in the elementary school are below 13 years old. They are kids. They should be treated as kids. They should not be treated as youths or adults. So educating them about sex, I thought it gives them a negative emotional impact, giving them more responsibility to think of making good and bad choices. As an African American from West Africa, my culture and religion and the values I practice does not permit my daughter to be taught sex education in school at the tender age. As an African American, in my culture, we see that kids below the age of 13 should be treated as kids. You can teach them about family life education.
Excuse me, could you please wrap up? Your 3 minutes are over.
Okay. You can teach them about sex education, family life education, but there are limitations to that. You can't go beyond because of the negative impact it creates most times on kids. So for me, my daughter, I will get him out by not maybe signing any documents coming from the school for sex education, because I will not want him to be given a lot of responsibility. But for those parents who don't know what really is in the classes, I'm really concerned. And I'm pleading and kindly requesting to you, important people, who I thought will be able to help us.
Thank you so much
very
for your
much.
testimony. And would you please provide the clerk with your name so she will have it, since you filled in for somebody else who was on here. Thank you so much. Vanessa Pointer, to be followed by Huina Gao.
Good evening, board members, Representative Chu, Chairwoman Evans, Superintendent Garza, faculty and staff, neighbors and friends. First, a kind thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight and share a few of my thoughts. I count it a privilege to have grown up and spent the entirety of my K through 12 years within the Fairfax County public school system. In fact, I'm a little nostalgic standing here and looking at the stage on which I performed as a middle schooler here at Luther Jackson. But currently, the CDC maintains that suicide among adolescent teens is the second leading cause of death in the 15 to 24-year-old age bracket. Suicide among our nation's youth is real, and it is a terrible, terrible thing. I understand the dire need that we as a school system, community, and culture need to pay attention to with regard to social and emotional well-being and youth mental health. That said, I certainly support a policy that aids the school system in implementing a strong prevention and risk assessment program for its teachers and its students. However, I am concerned about the manner in which the board intends to do so with regard to parent rights. I am not yet a parent. I'm a master's level early childhood development clinical professional, as well as a certified specialist in early intervention. I spend most of my time working with young children, but a lot of my efforts are spent behind the scenes advocating for and cheering for parents. I discovered that the Code of Virginia only requires parents to be notified if their adolescent teen communicates directly with the staff member when suicide is imminent. However, parents also have the right to know if their child is being identified or monitored. They have the right to know if their child is being screened, and they have the right to know when their child is being assessed. And it frightens me that these are missing pieces in your guidelines. I just hope that our parents are involved early in this process and their rights are not steamrolled, as seen with such policies like 1450. Additionally, this is a concern because suicide prevention begins with a family life that is safe, secure, and stable. And in recent discussions of family life education, the policy-making power with which the board has been entrusted appears abused. The haste in which it was written and discussed, the fact that there was hardly a, quote, advisory committee with broad community representation, as stated on the FCPS website, and the oversight of parents' rights when writing and implementing these policies. These are all indications that the board may be violating the authority in the eyes of its community, and I fear that this new policy may only continue that trend. Our children, your fellow students, your sons and daughters all deserve our strongest support, and such strength comes from an honest, thriving school community and the active involvement of their parents. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Now call on Huina Gao to be followed by Patrina Mosley and Bonnie Burkhart. Ms. Gao?
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Huina Gao, and I have 2 children in Fairfax County Schools. First of all, I would like to thank the school board for creating a nurturing environment for my children to grow. And second, I'm speaking tonight because I want to voice some concerns related to the overall well-being of students regarding the forthcoming regulations implementing gender identity addition to the non-discrimination policy and the students' rights and the responsibilities, which strangely is being approved tonight with the claim of no change when it clearly has changed and appears to be violating the state law. I was here a few months ago and listening to the testimony given by parents of transgender students. I was touched. No student should be subject to harassment, bullying, or denied of educational opportunities. But when it comes to school regulations, we need to set emotion aside and methodically scrutinize them from legal, logical, and a system-wise perspective. I'm deeply concerned over the implications and consequences in the regulatory changes that are set to come. I have to say that I do not feel comfortable to have my children placed in a bathroom or locker room with anyone of their opposite biological gender. For the concerns of my children's safety and privacy, as well as the modesty that is ingrained in our culture. A single-use facility can be provided for them, but this policy will subject my children to the same discrimination and exclusion that school board forbids to be done to gender dysphoric students. As I have said, no students should be subject to harassment or bullying regardless of their height, their weight, their look, and their struggle with issues related to gender dysphoria. I'm speaking this because, from my bottom of my heart because when I grew up, I used to be teased by my classmates simply because I sweat a lot. I was called smelly skunk. If I was such a girl now in Fairfax County, may I request the school to reduce the room temperature by 5 degrees so that I wouldn't sweat at all and wouldn't become the target of the bully? However, the important thing is, I don't believe schools' inability of providing such accommodation has anything to do with lack of inclusion. Maybe the key to tackle the smelly skunk situation is not the room temperature itself, but more of the understanding of the human body differences, and emphasis on students' character education, and providing more counseling service for children with special needs. Dear school board members, you are in charge of developing school regulations. I'm imploring each of you, please do not create more problems by precipitating the flawed implementation. Let's decompose issues rather than compounding them. Let's do not make a well-intentioned policy become an ill-constructed nightmare. Let's try our best to call for mutual understanding and respect. Call for the consciousness of not gobbling the liquor to quench the thirst.
Katrina Mosley, to be followed by Bonnie Burkhart. Is Katrina Mosley here? All right. Bonnie Burkhart?
I'm here to address the topic of suicide prevention with stories of 3 children that I know. The 8th grade FLE teaches about anal sex. Anal sex is not the normal means by which one couple enjoys intimacy or by which you make a baby. However, anal sex is the primary method by which one guy rapes another guy. I knew an 8th grade boy who was raped by a slightly older high schooler. Afterwards, he cried to his mother, "I didn't know you could do that to a guy." Obviously, he did not have the Fairfax County FLE lesson on that topic. Let's say he did have that FLE lesson after he was raped. The other guys in the class would say, "Wow, I didn't know you could do that to a guy." And their eyes would light up, they'd get smiles on their faces, and the boy who was raped would stare at their excited faces in absolute horror. After much parental support and counseling, he started his sophomore year by committing suicide. Over 90% of the rape victims are girls. A friend of mine was a victim of incest by her father. Her brother learned by example and then also started to rape her. She became pregnant with her brother's child, had a miscarriage alone in the barn, and buried the dead fetus in a haystack so no one would know. School was her only sanctuary away from the horrors of home. How would she feel then if a transgender guy showed up in her school bathroom or locker room? Her brother could just claim to be transgender in order to follow his rape victim into the school bathroom and terrorize her 24/7. She's now over 60 years old and still suffers from bulimia and anorexia, which I categorize as a slow form of suicide. Another of my classmates became an incest victim around 5th grade. It's not something 5th grade girls talk about, so I don't have a lot of details. Her older sisters apparently then started her on illegal drugs in order to cope, for that is how they cope with their father. Drug overdoses are also a slow form of suicide in my book. If you want to prevent suicides, keep the schools as a sanctuary for these children. For children like these, attend Fairfax County schools. Provide them someone to confide in and who can help them. Now, picture a woman holding her baby boy in her lap, screaming, as she tries to piece together the bloody fragments of his skull in a feeble attempt to see him one last time. Out of one side of your mouth, you talk about suicide prevention, while the other side of the mouth, you promote teaching anal sex and other rape techniques in school. For what harm could that possibly cause? You decide.
Paula Karp. Paula Karp. Oh.
Hi, good evening. My name is Paula Carpi. I was teaching for 33 and a half years as a special ed teacher before I retired from Fairfax County. 31 of those years have been in Fairfax County. Following retirement, I have been subbing on a daily basis or long term. The board needs to understand that all retired teachers are certified in their content areas. Most of us have a master's degree or 2. Some of us even have a PhD. By hiring a Fairfax County retiree, you're already getting a bargain in the classroom because you have hired a pro. When retirees are in the classroom, you're getting a professional. We already have the experience in the classroom, know how to deal with inappropriate behaviors, and know Fairfax County Public Schools policies and procedures. As they say, been there, done that. In all the years I have been teaching, I have never seen a group of employees treated this badly. We were told in June that our pay was going to be cut 33%. All subs would receive $14.23 an hour. In July, we were informed that our pay is still cut, but was increased by $1.10 an hour. Fairfax County retirees will receive $15.33. Was this a coincidence since DC's minimum wage was increased to $15 an hour? How degrading for the retired Fairfax County teacher who chooses to sub and now faces a 34% pay cut from $22.20 an hour to $15.33 an hour. Not to slight the regular subs who come in and do a good job, but retirees are the subs with many, many years of experience in the classroom. We have the knowledge of the subject matter and the ability to execute a plan and improvise if it is necessary. Even when we sub out of our discipline, we have decades of classroom savvy that makes us much more able to actually engage the student in their curriculum. Several times when I have subbed, there were no lesson plans left by the classroom teacher, or the plans were minimal. I had to use my many years of experience in the classroom to be creative and resourceful and to spontaneously generate a learning experience for the 30 students for the 7.5 hours. Could a less experienced sub, one with only 60 credits, or a non-teacher have done that? By eliminating the retiree track, the county is totally insulting us. By cutting retiree pay, you have lumped us in the same category as those with only 60 credits. Even the county school bus drivers are paid more, $18.82 an hour. If you ask the teachers in the classroom, the retiree's salary would have not been decimated. You would have increased it in order to keep the experienced pool of retirees. Does the county assume that retirees will continue to come in to sub for only $15.33? Most importantly, will those retirees come in and sub long-term for $21.91 an hour? I have done long-term subs approximately 10 times. Whoa.
It does come up fast, doesn't it, Ms. Carpy?
Can I just say one more thing?
If you could just wrap up,
Okay.
that would be fine. And I apologize for mispronouncing your name.
That's okay. Nobody gets it right, but that's okay. I just wanted to say, by the way, my dog walkers charge $15 a visit, which constitutes a 20-minute walk. When they walk 3 dogs in my neighborhood, they make $45 an hour. It's a lot more than the retired Fairfax County teacher, and they don't even have a degree. Thank you.
Thank you. We now turn to item 2.02, student representative matters, and I call on Ms. Chu.
Thank you, Most Honorable Chair. And first, I'd just like to thank all